Booyaka from the land of the West Side. West Side. I don't normally stream this late when I'm on the East, but I'm still on the West Coast. We're winding down from this trip. Me and my sons, it's been crazy. It's been fun. We got many stories to tell and all of that. So it's 6 p.m. over here, and I thought I've been having this interesting thought in my head that I thought, all right, let's talk about this. So if anybody on the East Coast, I don't normally stream this late, but let's get it. Let's have this conversation. First things first, welcome to CNN. I'm the underdog, your host, Kirk Kennedy. Let's go in. On this channel, we take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. If you were of the Christian tradition, such as I am, we know that tomorrow is not promised, but the day of the Lord is. So we want to remember the future right there. I can't even do it now. Right there, right there, right there. All right. And we are still on the road to 5K. Let's try to get to right now. I think I'm at 3630 something. Let's try to get to 3650 by what's today? Wednesday? Let's get to 37 by Friday. We can get to 3700 by Friday. Let's get it, man. Let's go. 3700 by Friday. Let's get it. All right, let's have this conversation. All right, let me tell you. So let me first say this, right? I'm not in any way, shape, or form minimizing the real psychological damage that happens when this happens to people. But I just want to talk about it from a more of a logistic standpoint than even a biblical one. Because I don't, there's biblical positions, I think, for everything. I'm not sure if I actually have a biblical position on this apart from one passage that I will talk about. But this is what I want to talk about. Let's talk about social media death threats, right? Now, back in the day when I grew up, before social media, like if you had beef with somebody, you couldn't get no text message. No one was posting nothing online. You had to, it was mano y mano. You was going to find that person and y'all was going to square up. I mean, you was going to fight, whatever that was, right? And you were always afraid, like I remember being in like elementary school, and you knew, like, man, this dude wants to fight you after school. School is out like at 3:00, and so you would be nervous, man, watching the clock. If everybody knew about it, then like everybody was like waiting until this time. I mean, I've seen fights where like the whole school was watching these two dudes just fight for a long time, and you get stamina because of that, right? But in this era that we live in, social media death threats is a big deal, and it often is a terrifying thing for the people that they happen to. Now, I've never gotten a death threat, but I've had people say wild stuff online, right, that I know that they wouldn't say to my face, or maybe they would, but then they would have to hope that my faith is intact. Because this is the thing, man. There, like, as a believer, even as a pastor, there are varying levels of maturity. There are some areas where you can be really strong and some where you're not. And I think sometimes in this era, Christians act like you can just say stuff, be reckless, and there are no consequences because you're both Christian. But that dude, might struggle with being talked to like that, punch you in your mouth, and then you realize, like, oh, so it's, but most people aren't afraid of that happening, because in this digital age, we have a digital nervous system and it's a digital community, and you feel like you know people because you see them online, but you've never met them, don't know much about them beyond what they would share with you and so forth, right? So you can say a lot of stuff and it doesn't really matter. But when you get a death threat, it's a big deal. Now, celebrities get death threats often. They get people. I mean, I remember recently Kim Kardashian was talking about getting death threats, and I guess you just get to the point where you shrug them off, right? But this is what happened recently. So there was a story that just happened. All right. So this is what made me start thinking about this and wondering, like, to what degree is this a serious thing for people? Like, if you get a death threat, like, what are you doing with that? Like, how do you process that, right? So let me pull this up. All right. So there's an Olympian. Her name is MyKayla Skinner, right? And she made some comments about the USA Olympic team that Simone Biles is, headed up. And she's a white woman, blonde hair, married with a child, I guess former Olympian. She said that the U.S. Olympic team, this particularly, she said, apart from Simone Biles, essentially said they lack work ethic and so forth. And they're pretty much said they're lazy and lack the kind of work ethic. And she also attributed that coaches will often not challenge. I think she used the word woke or gave the impression that in the culture we live in, you cannot challenge people hard because people are easily offended. So, in other words, she said to be an Olympian, you have to be pushed to the limit. And these Olympians don't have the type of discipline to be pushed that way, right? That's what she was getting at. So, apparently, Simone Biles and them, they won the Olympic gold, right? Um, Hold on, I want to pull this up because this is kind of wild. So they won the Olympic gold. Simone, first of all, Simone Biles is a gangster, right? So she's a gangster because she's pregnant, killed it in the Olympics, and then retired, announcing she's retiring because her and her husband are expecting. So she killed it in the Olympics, was flawless. There's this video that when you watch her do her routine, and then it shows all the other girls who have to go next, and they were all like this. It was hilarious. And the meme was like, when your enemies have to go after you or something like that, right? So MyKayla Skinner, she said that basically she gave the impression that they're lazy people. And then when they won the gold, the U.S. Olympic team, Simone Biles tweeted, lazy, no work ethic, but gold medal, gold Olympic gold winners, right? Which was basically a shot directly at MyKayla Skinner. And she ended up doing a video that has gone somewhat viral, and this is what she said. I want you to see this, and I want to have a conversation, just what you all think about this reality. All right. So I'm going to pull this up, and we are going to look at this video. And it's not funny, but I just think the age we live in is really crazy. And I guess, yeah, you know what it is? This is what I think. I think people say a bunch of stuff and they expect there to be no consequences for it. I remember when people who ran up in January 6th, who ran into the White House, and they started getting arrested like weeks afterwards, they couldn't believe it. And it was like, fam, you ran into the White House and destructed the destruction of federal property. So you want the people who march in Black Lives Matter meetings to get arrested for destruction of property, but we have you on video destroying the Capitol, and you expect there to be no consequences. And I just think we live in a society where people think the consequences of their actions don't really matter until they do, right? And so stay with me because I want to bring something up. If you're a believer, there's a lesson to be learned from this. But here's what she said after Simone Biles put the picture up and was like, lazy, no work ethic, Olympic gold medalist. This girl, MyKayla Skinner, got bombarded with stuff online. And here's what she said. Here's her appeal to Simone Biles and them. Here's what she said.
Hey everyone. I sincerely hope that this topic wouldn't need to be revisited, but unfortunately, things have really gotten out of hand lately. And it's one thing to disagree with me regarding something I have said or a point I was trying to make, but it's something else entirely when that turns into cyberbullying or even worse. Watching people cheer on the bullying, which has led to threats of physical harm to me, my husband, and our daughter, is disgusting. So please, at this point, I am just asking for it to just stop for the sake of my family, because enough is enough. So why I'm here is because about 4 weeks ago, I made a comment about work ethic and what seems to be taking place with the rising generation. To be totally clear, I take 100% responsibility for poorly articulating the point I was trying to make. And the last thing I wanted was to cause harm or offend our US Olympic team. I know these women are incredible, the very best of the best, and almost all of them are my former teammates who I have enjoyed very much cheering on the last few years. I posted a video apology on Instagram, and I followed up with a written apology, and I sent individual messages to each of the women on the team. Only Simone had responded, and she told me that she was proud of me. You guys can imagine my surprise last week when I was celebrating our team winning gold, just to see this brought up all over again by a caption on an Instagram post. If Simone truly believes that I called our team lazy and lacking talent, and if that's really how she feels, I am really heartbroken over it, but not just heartbroken because it isn't how I feel or even what I previously said, but heartbroken because Simone's latest post and others that followed it fueled another wave of hateful comments, DMs.
All right. So I don't have her original comments, but I heard them. Someone else on a YouTube video played her original comments, and I heard them. And I got to be honest, unless someone cut and splice the language, the way she talked, what it sounded like was, apart from Simone Biles, the USA Olympic team doesn't have work ethic and are lazy. That's what she said. So I thought it was really interesting to hear her say that if Simone Biles feels that way, I'm heartbroken because that's not what I said. I don't. So we're going to watch. There's only about 1 minute left. So I want to watch this to see if she says, "Here's what I did say." Now let me be clear. I think what's happening to her is evil, right? So I'm not. But I want to show you something about this and then make a point if you're a believer as it relates to this kind of this reality. All right.
Articles, and emails. Hate that includes death threats to me, my family, and even my agent. So, my family and my friends don't deserve to be caught in a crossfire here. They've done nothing. So, to Simone, I am asking you directly and publicly to please put a stop to this. Please ask your followers to stop. You have been an incredible champion for mental health awareness, and a lot of people need your help now. We've been hurt and attacked in ways that I am certain you never intended. Your performance, the team's performance, and the Olympics in general should be a time that we support one another and lift each other and our country up. I love our country and I love our team, and I hope that we can move on and move forward and cheer on the rest of our teammates and our athletes together.
All right, so let me make sure I go on the record and say that I do not think that this woman should be vilified, right? I don't think that she should get death threats for saying that. All right? I do not. I do not think so. But I want to say a couple things about this type of stuff, all right? Cuz social media death threats are wild. And I can't imagine. I've never had that. Now I'm built a little differently, so if you threaten my life or my children, I'm gonna just wait till you do it. I'm gonna wait till you do that. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm gonna wait. I'm not gonna. Yeah, I can't imagine it. I don't imagine that how that'll happen to me. But if it does, it does. What can you do? But there's a couple other things here that I thought were interesting. So first, just the reality of social media death threats. So I did a little bit of research. And again, some of this kind of stuff is very difficult to quantify. All right. So I did some research and I wanted to know um, how how many actual deaths happen from death threats that are made on social media towards celebrities. All right. So let me give you a summation of what I have. And it says death threats on social media towards celebrities are common, but actual murders resulting from these threats are rare. While many celebrities receive threats, such as Kim Kardashian and Taylor Swift, these threats often do not lead to physical harm. However, there have been instances where social media threats have escalated to violence, which is true, as in the case of Ismaili Brinsley, who killed two NYPD officers after making threats online. Overall, while social media has increased the visibility of threats, the transition from threat to actual harm remains uncommon. All right. So then I thought, okay, what about non-celebrities? Like, how much do like if you're just and again, the celebrity in this day and age, you can be like I could be a celebrity to some people, right? So it's subjective, but and it was this pretty much the same thing. It said while specific statistics on murder resulting from social media death threats to non-celebrities are limited, there is evidence that social media can escalate conflict, leading to violence. Police in England and Wales reported over 670 death threats on social media in 2020, but these do not always result in murder. Social media can fuel feuds among young people, sometimes escalating real life violence, though it is not the sole cause, right? And then so I just was doing some research, and not too much. I'm sure that there's more, but I'm saying this one, you know, in the age that we live in, it's like when you make a death threat online, let me tell you why the majority of them do not come true. Let me tell you why. If you get a death threat online, I think you should largely just ignore it for two main reasons. All right. The first reason is if you put a death threat online and then you get murdered, police are going to investigate every death threat that was made to you and are going to subsequently come after everyone who made the death threat. Now, I don't know if you know this, but legally, you can be arrested for making a death threat. Like, it's not like you just say that and then it's just like, hey, buddy, knock it off. Like, if I'm not mistaken, there's actually legalities that can happen if you make a public death threat. Like you cannot just threaten the life of the president and think you'll be okay. Secret Service to be at your door within hours after you doing that online publicly. It's really fascinating. So making a death threat makes you liable to incarceration, number one, court and incarceration or fines. So and most people live lives that are so spun up. Like many of us, like that, like let me give you an example. Trump got shot, what, 2 weeks ago? Was it 2 weeks ago? And it was the story of the ages. 2 weeks from now, it's not. Like only a few people are still talking about that. And we've moved on. Remember the big prophet who said he's going to be this super Christian after that and all of this, and people were waiting. People have already moved on. Like in the day and age that we live in, people move on from stories, man. They don't care. Like we have a digital nervous system that does not allow for patience and persistence unless you're really after that person, right? Most people who make death threats probably forget they made them a week or two later because you just move on. It's the culture we live in. We have too much information that we're available to have, and we have digital nervous systems that are so distracted, it's hard to focus and remember what you did a couple of days ago, let alone following through with a death threat. So I don't think she should have made that video asking for it to stop. I think what she should have done is say, you know what? I'm going to go dark for a few weeks. People are going to forget and they're going to move on because we're so desirous of the next story. What's the next thing? You know, everyone was talking a couple days ago. It was the boxing situation. Was that a trend? Was that a XY chromosomes in a supposed woman? It's just we live in the information age for a reason, and we're drawn to the information age. So I think if you get social media death threats, right? Social media death threats, I think you should just chill out and people will forget, move on. It's not that serious. When you make a video like that, in the culture that we live in, people are going to probably celebrate that, because what people try to do is to get under your skin, right? This is what people want. They want you to be afraid. They want to control you. And the best way to control people is fear. Fear. This is why the Bible says God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-control. Fear is the enemy's tactic because that's the way he controls you. Think about Hebrews 2, right? 14 through 18. It said that, I'm paraphrasing, but it said that Jesus came to free those who had a fear of death by removing death, the power of death from Satan, right? So fear is fundamentally the greatest tactic. This is a separate video I would make, but this is why I no longer watch like demonic scary movies. And what? Because even though we know that it's acting and it's fake, there is an element where you become afraid, and when you're afraid of something, you give it power. And if it's the enemy, you give it power, right? So I think if you get death threats, you should just keep it moving. But let me tell you the second thing, though. And this is the second thing that I think, and this is where I'm going to speak from something that Jesus said. I want you to see something. Here's what Jesus said in Luke 16. It's unrelated, but I want you to see this real quick. This is what he said in Luke 16. I'm going to use this as a principle. It's a principle, all right? This is what Jesus said. And the Pharisees and Sadducees came and to test him. They asked him to show them a sign from heaven. He answered, when it is evening, you say, it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, it will be stormy day, for the sky is red and threatening. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the sign of the times. An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given it except the sign of Jonah. So he left them and departed. There's a principle here that I think all believers should have this principle. And it's not in the prophetic sense where everyone's getting a word from the Lord and making a YouTube video, and that's a whole different thing. But what Jesus says here is this. It says this in verse 3, second half. He says, you know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. People, you got to know what the sign, what the age is that we live in, right? We live in a social media age where people are emboldened because of the lack of direct personal contact. People are emboldened to be rude, to be aggressive, to be angry because of that, right? In the video I did yesterday, I think it was yesterday, when I was talking about love will increase because the love of many will grow cold because lawlessness will be increased, right? So there's a reality that we live in an age where people will vilify you. I don't know if you remember this video. Remember there was a meme, or it was a GIF or a GIF, I don't know what it's called, GIF, where you would see this old dude just start crying. It was like, "Wah!" And everyone was like laughing at that joint. But when you actually watch that video, why that happened, it was a very tender moment where there was a guy, the guy was a boxer who had abandoned his family, got hooked on drugs, and was in the streets in like Philadelphia. His sons grew up without him. They found out who he was, met with him, and they met him to tell him that they were angry at him for leaving them. But then at the end, one son says, basically, he says, I'm just here to tell you that no matter what, like, I still love you, man. And he starts crying. He's telling his dad that. And then the old guy just wails and starts crying. And it was just like a wow. Like but it turned into a gift that everyone laughed at, or a meme, whatever. It turned into something people laughed at. That's the culture we live in today. We live in a culture where people will mock you and laugh, and they don't care. The compassion towards your situation is over. People don't care. That's why I almost didn't want to share about my mom being in the ICU, because some people they'll say anything. Like when I was on Ruslan's, when I was on Ruslan's channel a couple weeks ago, in the comments section of that video, someone said this. What I heard was, I'm paraphrasing, but they said something like, what I heard was, eat lots of food, gain something. They were making fun of my weight, right? And that wasn't, there was nothing about what I was saying on that video that had anything to do with being healthy or being in shape, none of that. We were talking about politics most of the video. And I said, hey, I knew someone would post a dumb response like this. Thanks for doing that. And then it was like, hey, thanks for calling me dumb, and all that. And I said, I didn't call you dumb. I said the response was dumb. It was immature. That's the culture we live in. I expect when I go on like Ruslan's channel, someone's channel, that there's going to be comments where people are mocking how I look at all that stuff, right? You got to understand the sign of the times, man. And this is what I tell believers, like, look, man, if you want to fight for this, if you want to die on that hill, do it. If you feel like, hey, I'm not gonna participate in sensitivity training on my job, do it. Don't do it. But like, I don't know if the Bible commands that you die, that you say you're not going to do that and you're willing to risk your job and lose it. But if you have a conviction, do it. But just know the sign of the times that you're in. Like, people are not going to feel bad for you unless they agree with you. You're going to be potentially vilified for that. So I'm saying all that to say, this girl, when she made these statements, what I heard her original comments were they were lazy and didn't have a good work ethic. So it was interesting that now the death threats are coming in and she's getting vilified. She's saying she didn't say that. I could be wrong, because the video I heard sounded like she said that. I think it would have been wise for her to realize, listen, for whether you think this is woke or not, or right or not, it doesn't matter. We got to deal with reality, right? Here's the reality of the culture we live in. You can call it woke, you can hate it, you can say whatever you want about it. You still got to live in reality, right? If you are white, blonde, and like that, and you make derogatory comments publicly about black people. Now, I don't know if the whole USA Olympic team is black. I doubt it. But, the one who headed it is black, Simone Biles. And now she did say apart from her. But when you make comments like that, you're going to get vilified if for any reason. But then it didn't come true. They won the gold. They crushed it. They won the gold. And you say that, you got to know the sign of the times that you live in. If you say things, I run the risk every time I do a video that there's going to be people who push back and who are offended or whatever, and you just got to deal with it. And I think you got to know that. But that's just in general. Let me give one last thought for believers that I think we are also caught in as a result of the culture that we live in. So I want you, if you're a Christian, if you're not a Christian, thanks for watching. Totally get it. You'd be like, I don't want to listen to this. Totally get it. If you're a believer, I want you to listen to me for a second. Especially if you've watched my videos before, I say these things to try to honor the Lord and to try to benefit you if it does. So if it, take this with a grain of salt unless you got high blood pressure. And actually I don't, despite how fat I am. Something that we need to be careful of, because I think this is more of an epidemic in the world, not just in the world in terms of us and Christian and non-Christian. There is a reality right now that I saw this happen in 1991 when Magic Johnson got HIV. Some of you remember this well. Magic Johnson contracted the HIV virus, and and he was still playing in the NBA. He actually retired, and they wanted him to play in the All-Star game and all that. But there was a rule that if you were bleeding, you had to come out of the game because Magic Johnson contracted the HIV virus, and it was a big deal. And a lot of work went to talking about HIV and AIDS and Magic. But then eventually, I don't know what happened, but this is what Magic said. I'm sorry. When they asked him how I think he got it, he said, "Look, in my younger days, I basically slept with a lot of women unprotected." And he said, I felt invincible. I felt like nothing could happen to me, right? And so that's why he did that. And a lot of other people who are famous say things like that. And I remember it was like a humbling thing for Magic to acknowledge that. And I appreciated that he did that. But there's a deeper principle there. I think we live in a culture like this MyKayla Skinner woman and other people where we think there are no consequences for our actions, no bad ones at least. And I think we think like that as believers. Like I think Christians can think because of a view of grace that I think is a horrible view of grace, where like we talk about grace versus works and grace as opposed to works. I'm sure I did a video about this before, but let me say this real quick so this statement makes more sense. If you don't, I think I did a video on this. If you do not understand the context of works, then you will misapply it and you'll actually stand before God and realize, oh no, I'm not going to heaven. And let me explain what I mean. In the Bible, in the New Testament, like in Ephesians 2 is a great passage, 2:8. For it is by grace that you have saved and not of works, right? This is so that no man can boast, right? Then it says, for we are God's workmanship, saved by him for good works. So I'm paraphrasing, right? If you don't understand that in the scriptures, particularly in the New Testament, the context of works based salvation was the Mosaic law. If you don't understand that, then you're going to misapply that passage and other passages that talk about works. No man can work. Paul's context is the Mosaic law as a former Jew, right? If you're reformed and you're thinking of the Reformation, Calvin, Luther, and all these guys, Bavinck and Spur, right? If you which I love those guys. If you are reformed, well, the 95 Theses of Luther, the context of works was Catholic works. It was the indulgences. It wasn't just you're saved by faith in Jesus. It was you're saved by faith and the traditions of the church. And there were works. So the Reformation's context for grace over works is what the Catholic Church was teaching, right? Paul's context for works is the Mosaic law mostly, right? If you do not understand that, then you will think that when it talks about works, that works can't earn salvation, you're saved by grace. What we live in, the culture we live in today, because people didn't have the context of those of works, they think that the works that the Bible is opposed to is the actually obedience that God is requiring. So people will say stuff like, when you're trying to fight, no, that's works, bro. That's a works based. No. That's called obedience, fam. Like we live in a culture today where people think the Bible is opposed to works, and the works that they think the Bible is opposed to is actually obedience. It's fascinating to me. That's why you have these dumb conversations like once saved, always saved. It's like, well, what do you mean, fam? Are you saying that I can profess to be a Christian, not live it at all, die and still go to heaven because I made a profession of faith? Like salvation is not just a profession of faith. The Bible says he who endures to the end will be saved. There's work that comes with that profession that every genuine believer must have. This isn't works-based salvation. This isn't works that earn salvation. This is works that prove you have salvation, right? This is the point. So we live in this confusing day and age in the modern day church where we actually will think the works that we're supposed to reject are the things that God told us to do in obedience to him, right? I'm saying all that to say there are consequences for our actions. There are Christians, I've said this in the other video when I said about love and taking love back. There are people who think you can be a Christian, not love your neighbor as yourself, and that God's going to be cool with that. Or you can be a Christian, not forgive people who offend you, legitimately hurt you and offend you, as if Jesus didn't say in Matthew 6, 13 and 14, if you do not forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive you your trespasses. Like it's fundamental. 1 John 4:20, if you do not love your brother, you cannot love God whom you haven't seen, if you do not love your brother whom you have seen. Like we live in a day and age where people, Christians, think there's no grace is so amazing that I can pretty much do whatever and I'm still saved and there's no consequences for that. And let me tell you right now, grace is not that amazing. Grace is not that amazing that you can just say I'm saved, not trip, and then die and be like, man, where's my eternal? No, I think a lot of professing believers are going to be shocked because they didn't understand the context of works that the Bible was talking about, that the Reformation or whatever other theological distinctive that you subscribe to, and you thought the works that you didn't have to do was actual obedience that God has required. And some of that, most of that obedience is character. It's character based. It's character. I'm saying this to say we live in a culture, don't fall victim. This girl thought I could say whatever publicly and there aren't consequences for it. And maybe she thought they're not going to win the Olympic gold. And then they won it. She's like, I'm cheering on my team. But you did call them lazy. I'm not saying she didn't cheer them on. I'm not saying she was doing it. She definitely doesn't deserve to have death threats. But I think in the culture and the sign of the times that we live in, let me tell it to you how we used to say it when we grew up. Watch your mouth. Watch your mouth. Whether you call it woke or not, watch your mouth. If you say something and you put it out there, anyone can take it, can use it, and it can become something against you, right? Even in the court of law, right? People plead the fifth because they don't want their words to be used against them, right? Your words will be used against you. This is the culture, and people are looking for it. Remember when Kevin Hart was asked to host the Grammys about 3 years ago? And people went back 10, 15 years ago to find tweets that he did that made fun of the sexual acronym community. And he was like, what? They're pulling up, like, first of all, people can't grow and change their mind. First of all, the jokes were funny as a mug. And I say stuff like that to my kids all the time. So I'm glad I don't got this platform because I definitely wouldn't be able to host nothing. But I think there's a reality that this girl is realizing, watch your mouth. There are consequences for what you say and do. Watch your mouth. And I think for believers, we have to be careful that we interpret the sign of the times that we're in, and also remember the grace. Remember biblical grace. Don't remember cultural Christian grace, because that grace believes in once saved, always saved. The great biblical grace is if you're saved, your works and your obedience will endure to the end. Just like I said in the video about love, it's whoever endures to the end in loving people, even though lawlessness, sin has increased, will make it to the end. I feel bad for this girl, but it'll go away. In a week or two, no one's going to be thinking about this girl. No one's going to even be thinking about Simone Biles. People, we're so inundated with information, we just move on. So if you get death threats, just lay low. I guarantee no one's going to care unless you keep doing things to get those death threats. But if you're a believer, two things. There are consequences for our actions, our words, everything. Jesus, Matthew 12:36 says, everyone will be judged. Everyone's idle words will be judged. And by your words, you will be condemned, or by your words, you will be justified. You know, we got to look at salvation as not this little neat little, hey, I can just kind of grace, I can just kind of do whatever. Like, no, grace definitely forgives us for missing the standard, but it doesn't say you're allowed to keep missing the standard and not trying because grace is so amazing. It's not that amazing. And I think sadly, a lot of believers who profess to believe will hear the I don't know you. And it's not because you didn't know theology. It's not because you didn't understand the doctrines of grace. I think if we go to hell as professing believers, if I don't make it, it's going to be because I didn't live the character of grace. Jesus is not compromising on that. He's not playing. And I think we live in this day and age where people think God's playing, that he's okay with just giving. He's just not, fam. And I think know the times that we live in and know that there are consequences for our actions. You got to understand that Christianity is work. People say you're not supposed to strive. Hebrews 12:14. Strive for peace with everyone. The actual word strive. And for holiness, without which no one will see the Lord. Man, I'm telling you, man, people are just like living and not tripping and expecting to just get this big reward from the Lord. And I think you're gonna get the pearly gates proverbially closed in your face. And I tremble at that thought. So I'm working hard so that the Lord doesn't say that to me. I don't want to hear that when it's too late. I want to be aware of it now. which leads me to something else, but that's a separate video. All right, let's go to the tape. So let's go to the tape, go to the tape, go to the tape, go to the tape. Let's get it. Good evening, Kurt. What's good, Brandon? Good to see you. Then it's real, LOL. That's what's up. What kind of people are making those types of threats? I don't know, fam. That's a good question, Milton. It's hard to know that. It's hard to know what it is. It's hard to know. What's this? Ghost. I'm late. Yeah, Ghost. If you watch the video, then you know what it is, right? All right. Yo, PC, I've been sickly. Don't catch the shingles, man. I hope not, bro. I don't want to catch them joints. I don't want to catch them. Yeah, I've had them twice. They are zero fun. Sorry to hear that. I hope you feel better. Thank you, Future. I hope you feel better, brother. Who is MyKayla Skinner? I think I said it in the video, so I'll let you know. I'd appreciate it if you added me to your prayer list. 100%, brother. As a matter of fact, Lord, I just pray for my brother Chris right now, Lord. I pray that you would help him. Shingles is no joke, Lord, and he's sick. And Lord, it's nothing for you to take the shingles away or to boost his immune system so that he can deal with it. So, Lord, we ask that you would give him grace specifically in removing the illness from him. But, Lord, at the same time, if you choose not to, Lord, then give him the grace to persevere and remind him that when he gets to be home with you, there's no such thing as shingles. So either, Lord, remove this from him or use these shingles to remind him to look forward to his final destination with you, where shingles was a thing of the past. In your name we pray, amen. Hope you get better, brother. She's a former Olympian, former team in the book. Yep. Lord have mercy. Women's sports is about dang near everything but sports. Shaking my head. Yeah, brother. It's pretty crazy out there. Unfortunately, no accountability. Well said, Matt. But I agree, this isn't a reason for death threat. No, this is so dumb. But you know what, though? I don't even think people are making credible death threats. I don't think they're real. I think there's something to do. So in a video 2 days ago, I think, I talked about that right now, the American dream, that it has threefold: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that right now, what everyone is fighting over is who controls the pursuit of happiness, who determines what that is. And that's what's happening in the culture we live in. And I think people are just all trying to get their own slice of what they feel entitled to of the American dream. So and the American dream is really, if in one word, the American dream is about having power. It's power. It's not money. Money, people only want to be rich to have power. Who would want to be rich and then not be respected or known for, right? So in this culture, death threats give people power. They make you feel like, oh, okay, I can affect this person. That's why if I was her husband, I would have said, babe, don't say nothing. Don't say nothing, sweetie. Don't say nothing. Let's let it pass. I'll get a firearm if need be. We'll hire some security for a couple of weeks, but don't say nothing. Because once you do that, you let people know they rattled you. They rattled you, and now they have power, and that's what happens. So it's just crazy time. Ironic, she says cheering and supporting teammates, but she did it the exact 100%. Rick, this is what I mean. You got to know that, people aren't dumb, fam. You can't mock people and then say that's not what I meant. No one's dumb. And so with that said, it's definitely wrong inside her family. Yeah, I think it is, but I would totally agree that I think that's what she did. There was a guy who threatened Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce at the Morgan Wallen concert recently, and that dude, 100%, it's a crime. It's a crime to do that. That's why I don't think people actually do that, right? They don't follow through because you're going to get caught. They're going to know, hey, you were one of the people who made death threats. They're going to figure out where were you, and they're good at what they do. The level of unhinged you have to be to send a death threat to a random stranger because they said that people don't even know how poor work. I just think it's just demonic, Future, right? It's the sign of the times. And I didn't say this, but I'm glad you said that. We have to understand the scripture tells us that Satan is going to ramp up in the end times because his time is coming to an end. So this kind of stuff is just demonic. I don't even know if I care enough. Now, obviously, I'm a believer, and I believe the Holy Spirit is in me, and so I process things differently, but I don't even care enough about, I remember when I would put something out on social media, if people got really offended and so, oh, you're just this, I would say, hey, bro, okay, even if that's true, like, why are you so offended? Why does my comment bother you? I'm not your pastor. I don't even know you. Like, why are you so offended by this comment? It's because people are just, it's demonic activity, that fit of rage, the anger, the threat of taking one's life. I just think these people need the Lord. They need the Lord. Also, you have to realize there are a ton of unhinged people out there these days. So you have to be careful, especially if you, yeah, I think you do. I think you do. Fickle, 100%. Two of the gymnasts are black, one Asian, one white. One that is there but not participating is black as well. All right, so it's probably black. So saying work, and that's usually when people say they don't have work ethic, they're usually talking about black people. Usually. First, it's all first 76%. Constant friction between men. 100%, brother. Well said. Very well said. The overcomer receives the crown. Can't just sit up. No, you can't, man. You can't. And I think we don't have a Christianity that talks like that. We have a Christianity that's so grace driven that we think that it's so grace oriented that no works are required. It's all grace. And it's like, I don't know what scripture you're reading. You don't understand the context of works in the Bible and works in the Reformation, and whatever other denominational distinctive that you're subscribed to. You just don't. Because there's nothing about scripture that tells us that we don't have to work or to do anything. That's just not true. I don't know anyone who's trying to earn salvation. I don't. I know people who think obedience is earning salvation. And let me be emphatically clear. Obedience is proving salvation. It's not earning it. You are deceived if you think your praying, your reading, your evangelism, your resisting sin is somehow seen by, is like the God is opposed to that. No, God applauds that. We've been hoodwinked by the enemy. I just think it's fascinating to see this play out. Bro, it's because people refuse and actually hate to read their Bible and looking ways to justify their ungodly beliefs and behavior and excuse under the misunderstanding of grace. I agree with that, bro. Caleb, I agree with that. I think that's very true. It's easier. You know what? It's easier to read theology than just the Bible, because theology is man's explanation, right, of the things of God. And we can get things wrong based on our cultural framework and the emphasis that we're trying to accomplish. So the reality is that reading the Bible by itself, you cannot come away with this stuff. You cannot, and especially if you take scripture, the whole counsel of God, you can't come away with a view of grace that we have. That view of grace that is currently here is theological. It's not biblical. And I do make distinctions between the two. Facts. I mean, facts wasn't just what I said, but I appreciate the facts. Matthew 15:8. Yeah, brother. Watch your mouth. That's right, bro. I'm telling you, bro. That's just, you gotta watch your mouth, man. Unless you okay with it. Like the stuff I say, I'm good with. So if somebody has a problem, they got a problem with it, I'm good with it. Like, I stand by it. But if I said something that's offensive and I'm wrong, I'm gonna ask for forgiveness. I'm gonna take it back. I'm gonna take it back. If that's sin, I'm taking it back. But they won't approach me in person. Tight, right? I'm telling you, bro. I see it all the time, and these dudes be tough online, bro. And then they be texting you later, wanting to like ask you to like hook up and like mob up, and it's like, bro, I mean, bro, go back online and say that I'm not a coward. Then what you mean? What you texting me for and wanting to? It's just, you'd be surprised, bro. You'd be surprised. Me and Ruslan were talking about this from a different angle. He was talking about how guys are too afraid to do videos on topics because of the impact they could have. But they'll tell him, you should talk about this. He's like, bro, why don't you just bring it up? There's like a fear. It's really fascinating. I'm a meek person. You like Meek Mill? You like Meek? No, I'm just playing with you. I know I'm just playing. I get it. One of my favorites, straightforward, grace and truth. Yeah, bro, 100%. People want to be the one responsible for their salvation, even they would profess to be a Christian. Brother, I think there's truth in that statement. I think people do want to be responsible for their salvation. Well, I agree with that. But I think people don't think they need. Actually, you know what? So I would probably disagree a little bit, Mark. I know what you're saying, and I think I do agree on one level. So let me say it like this, and it may be a little bit different. I think people don't think they need to be responsible for their salvation because of grace, their understanding of grace, which is a skewed view. I think people don't think they need to be responsible. They can compromise, they can fall into sin because grace, and this is how people, this is the phrase that you'll hear that reveals that people do this. You'll hear this phrase, God knows my heart. As if like God's like, yeah, man, I don't mind you sinning because I know your heart. Like, no, yes, God knows our hearts. And yes, he does permit a degree of sin, but he also knows when God knows our hearts to know, do we really want to honor him though? Like he knows who the fake believers are versus the real ones. He knows that. He knows that they're going to be believers that are just like not really tripping, and they're going to be believers that sin, but they're really tripping. And he knows the difference. He's not going to be mocked. Everyone sins and is worthy to go to hell. But the ones that don't are going to be because God knew they really were trying to honor me. He knows what's what. When I said, then it's real or well, I was referring to when you was talking about Christians talking reckless to each other and someone not controlling. Right. Yeah, sometimes you got to pop out and show them, right? Sometimes you got to pop out. Sometimes it's like that, man. There are times in my flesh, bro, I'll be honest. There were times in the past, by the grace of God, I'm not in this place now, but I can be tempted to be here. There were times in the past I wanted to run into someone at a conference. I was hoping to run into someone, not because I wanted to do harm, but I wanted to see if you keep that same energy, because it's funny. I joke around with my kids all the time, right? We'll be driving and you'll just see these teenagers just walking across the street when they're not supposed to because it's my turn to drive, right? So it's like, to me, it's like, man, these kids just think like they're just assuming that I respect their lives so much that I won't just hit the accelerator and just hit them. And of course, by the grace of God, that's not what I would do. But they don't know that. They're just acting like, oh, their life is so special that they're exempt. It's like, fam, you got to be careful. I tell my kids, hey, listen, man, don't think that these people care about your life. They might be on their phone and not paying attention. These people be walking around like ain't nobody gonna mess with me. And it's like, Slim, by the grace of God, you didn't get hit by no car. But it's like somebody might be in a bad mood. You walk across the street, they be like, you know what? Boom. So you just gotta be careful. 1 John 5:12. You give us the scriptures, brother. That's the word right there. You always keep us grounded. Thank you, Jules. Appreciate you. Okay, I appreciate that perspective. Makes a lot of sense. Right. Yeah. I just think my perspective is more that, bro. I think believers, don't think they need to be responsible for their sin. And I think, and I've never thought that, but I definitely think that I have abused grace in ways that I would sin and have sinned in long patterns of it, knowing I'm supposed to go after it, but somehow thought that God was not okay with it, but I'm still good despite. And I just think, I think that's a dangerous perspective to have now. I don't think we should presume on grace like that. I think we should think grace empowers me not to sin rather than grace grace removes the consequences when I sin. That's true to a degree, but at some point, God cannot be mocked, and you might end up crossing a line that you can't come back from. And I've seen many people do that too. So, anyway, just a thought, man. Social media death threats, crazy time we live in, crazy time. And what does 2 Timothy 3 say? Inventors of evil. I think that's 2 Timothy 3. No, it's actually Philippians. But anyway, appreciate y'all, man. Grace and peace. See y'all in the next video.